Hello and welcome back to the Independent News Depot. Today we are going to discuss a life or death subject that could potentially affect anyone viewing this video. Before we get started, I would like to encourage you to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss any of our future presentations. The subject at hand is part 1 of the series exploring the existence of a license to hunt human beings in the United States. Sounds far-fetched? Let's take a closer look. Webster's dictionary defines a license as a permission granted by competent authority to engage in a business or occupation or in an activity otherwise unlawful. A document, plate, or tag evidencing a license granted. In this discussion, we will be paying attention to the first aspect of this definition. Some commonly held licenses include fishing, hunting, driving, marriage, and barber's license. There are also licenses that are not as common yet work in a similar manner, such as a medical license, a pilot's, and firearms license. But what about the license to hunt people? Does it truly exist? A commonly held license around the world is the license to hunt. If a person were to pick up a rifle, go into the woods, and kill a deer without being in possession of a license, they could potentially be jailed and face monetary fines as a means to discourage this behavior. If, on the other hand, that same individual would engage in that exact same conduct with the authority granted to them by a hunting license, they would not be at risk of any form of penalty. In fact, they would most likely be rewarded for their successful hunt. These same dynamics would be in play with a license to hunt humans, should such a license truly exist. Let us examine the exact same behavior. This time, instead of a bear, the prey happens to be a human. If Plumber Joe were to decide one day to pick up his AR-15 and start indiscriminately firing on unarmed, defenseless members of his community, he would not have the ability to use self-defense as a means of avoiding criminal prosecution. He has not been granted any special license authorizing him to use deadly force unless it was in defense of his life. Even with the best attorneys that money could buy, it would be far-fetched for the Plumber Joe to mount a successful defense by stating he mistook his victim's phones or vape pens for firearms. This is especially true were his acts to be captured on camera. The likelihood that this individual would be charged and convicted of homicide is very high. This point is demonstrated by the low percentage of mass shooters caught on camera who are able to obtain a not guilty verdict in a court of law. We have already established through Webster's definition that a license can take the form of a plate. If a person with a particular plaque pinned to his or her chest were to open fire on unarmed members of the community, they would usually avoid prosecution because of the powers that comes with that license or badge. Unlike Plumber Joe, the holders of this particular license would have the ability to routinely mistake cellular phones or even wallets for weapons and mount a successful legal defense. More often than not, this officer would never face criminal charges in the first place. This badge gives its holder the same rights when dealing with humans that the hunting license gives us when dealing with a wild bear. Imagine, if you will, what would happen if a particular club or group within the bear hunting community routinely mistook unarmed pedestrians for attacking grizzlies, resulting in the loss of innocent life. There is no real threat, but their fear compels them to imagine the worst of every encounter in the woods. How long would it take for that group or club to be stripped of their ability to go hunting? What about if every time a twig broke in the woods, the hunters were in such fear for their lives that they felt the need to empty dozens of rounds in the direction of the sound? Would they have demonstrated the competence to be entrusted with a deadly weapon? Or would they be forced to go through both psychological and drug testing from the confinement of a prison cell? If you are that afraid of the woods, maybe you should consider another career. If you are too cowardly to make sure that you are truly in danger, then you are in the wrong line of work and belong in a straitjacket. One would not even be able to keep a driver's license if they mistook the letter C for the letter D on their visual portion of the driving test. So why should someone keep their license to decide life and death if they can't differentiate a book from a firearm? I feel the need to state that most members of law enforcement are honest, trustworthy, honorable individuals. However similar to those that possess other licenses, there is a percentage of bad actors who mask their criminal conduct behind the actions of the brave and honorable individuals that actually serve with valor. Most people with driver's license aren't drunk drivers, and most Boy Scout leaders don't prey on children. Yet the innocent ones don't get defensive when we punish the guilty within their community. For those that may ask, why would the police be out to kill anyone? They swear an oath to uphold the Constitution. To those people, I would ask, have you ever heard of a group that routinely hunted Americans in cold blood while wearing white hoods and sheets? Are you aware that a considerable number of the members of this group were officers of the law, as well as high-ranking government officials? This was how they were able to operate without fear of criminal prosecution. No one in their right mind would attempt to prosecute themselves. After federal infiltration of this infamous group, many were instructed by the organization's hierarchy to change their look and modus operandi. The hood became a badge, the sheet became a state seal. From then on, it was business as usual. Every time an unarmed civilian has their lives ended at the hands of this state-sponsored organization and it's captured on camera, there is nationwide protest, followed by a Department of Justice investigation concluding with findings that substantiate the accusations of the community being terrorized. Instead of investigating Ferguson or NYPD or LAPD, when are they going to look at the law enforcement apparatus as a whole? After 9/11, the U.S. government didn't only visit individual homes in Afghanistan after dozens of attacks were launched from that home. Instead, they went door to door assuming the entire community was corrupt. They hunted down the perpetrators and their supporters, saying you are either with us or the terrorist. It was then the responsibility of all within that community to weed out the bad actors or face a similar fate as the wrongdoers. Similar to the Bloods, Crips, and Italian Mafia, the hunters of human beings adhere to a strict code of silence called the Blue Wall. They don't weed out the and actors, they cover for them. This is what leads many to believe that the hunting of unarmed citizens isn't a negative side effect, but the main unstated purpose. It's by design. As far as them swearing an oath is nothing but a promise, and promises are made to be broken. Every day people swear to love and cherish one another through sickness and in health until death do them apart, but over 50% of marriages end in divorce. If the oath means nothing when it comes to dealing with loved ones, what fairy tale do we live in where it is enough to contain unchecked power, especially when dealing with those who are viewed as others? It would appear that the hunters of wild animals are held to a higher standard than the hunters of human beings. It is prohibited for an American to hunt a polar bear, however black and brown bears can be legally hunted, demonstrating that the same rules don't necessarily apply throughout a particular species. If someone is accused of hunting a polar bear, the ensuing investigation is not conducted by members of their hunting lodge. They are investigated by an independent investigative body. If a licensed hunter of humans is accused of hunting a human with black or brown-colored skin, the predators are investigated by their peers, their buddies from the same department, so very few are ever charged with a crime. In fact, just like the winner of a bear hunting competition, the accused human hunters are typically given a trophy or reward in the form of a paid vacation, also referred to as paid administrative leave.
It's that Murray followed the police officer's commands and had his hands up, but was still shot in the chest. Officials in Indianola have voted to place the police officer on paid administrative leave.
The famous behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner established that a behavior immediately followed by a reward is likely to be repeated, and a behavior immediately followed by a negative consequence is likely to be avoided. This is the law of classical conditioning. It's how most living organisms learn the rules of their environment. It is why a child who reaches on a counter and is pricked by a sharp object is less likely to reach on that counter again when compared to another child who reaches on a counter and grabs a cookie. If the hunting of unarmed citizens were truly just collateral damage, why is it the offenders are rewarded with an all-expense-paid vacation in most cases? The worst part of this scenario is that the predators' paid vacations are typically funded by the tax revenue of the fallen humans and their surviving family members. Most people are under the impression that once a member of law enforcement is fired for breaking the law, he or she is prohibited from working in that line of work. However, nothing can be further from the truth. A police officer fired for misconduct is only prohibited from being employed in that jurisdiction. They have the option of relocating a few miles away across county lines where they can and usually do get rehired. This is like telling a drunk driver who takes the life of someone on the road that he is no longer allowed to drive on I-95. He must now travel I-97 instead, where he is free to victimize another unsuspecting population. This is exactly how the criminal behavior of rogue priests within the Catholic Church dealt with their offenders. They closed rank and relocated the offender under the legal protection of the Vatican. The need for police reform cannot be exaggerated. It literally is a matter of life and death. Believe it or not, we have only scratched the surface of this subject, But unfortunately, this episode has run out of time. Please join us for part 2 of this discussion, the license to hunt humans in the United States of America. As usual, we encourage you to smash the like button and share your thoughts about this subject in the comments section. What do you think? Does the badge coupled with the blue wall of silence equate to a de facto license to hunt certain humans? If you know of anyone that would enjoy this video, feel free to share it with them. Once again, I am Denzel Elijah signing out from IND News Desk. Goodbye.